This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Amazon for all your gifting needs.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals participating in the show. All persons described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions along with adult language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Think of the most famous haunting you can think of. Do you have it in your mind? What is the most famous case of a haunting in American history, perhaps even world history? Well, tonight, we're going to figure out if it's real or complete horseshit. You're listening to the Mysterious Brews podcast, and tonight we bring you the case of the Amityville Horror, real or fake.
The general public just grabbed onto it. That story, the book, the movie,
It's the greatest American haunted house story ever told.
we're still talking about it 40 years later.
6 members of one family have been found shot to death in Amityville, Long Island.
I had no control over it. I had to be possessed by the devil.
Ronald DeFeo said that there were ghosts in the house. He said that there were devils on his back and that something was wrong with the house.
This was not the Amityville Horror case at that time. That was the beginning.
Welcome to a deep, dark, dank, moist, extremely cold basement somewhere in the bowels of Georgia.
Dude, it is absolutely freezing in Georgia. I don't see how. I've always wanted to live up north. I had a dream of living in Alaska, but the past couple of days, I'm like, man, I would die.
I would still like to live out west, like Wyoming, Montana, South Dakota. I still would like to do it.
Absolutely, I would, but I'd have to. You know, my blue jeans and hoodie ain't cutting it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd have to invest in the old Carhartt quilted.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get a better wardrobe, better socks for damn sure.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be with the wind chill. Today's Wednesday. Is it? It's Wednesday. Yeah. With the wind chill on Friday, it's supposed to feel like 9 degrees.
Man, what the hell? What the hell, dog?
I casually mentioned to my principal, it would be a great day to call off. You can't have them chidlings waiting on for the bus in 9 degrees.
I can't believe they didn't call it off today around here because the air temperature was 20 at 6 a.m.
Yeah, it's rough, but hell, come next week, we're going to be back in the 60s.
Yep. The old adage is move to Georgia if you don't like the weather. Wait a day.
Just wait a minute, yeah. For sure.
Well, one good thing is we've gotten a lot of feedback with our new patrons that have joined strictly on us blackmailing them and not releasing regular episodes.
Blackmail always works.
Always works.
Right?
Yeah. As of today, I will probably, let me go back to it. It is, let's see, do we have anybody new? Yes, we do. Okay, so, believe she has been, all right. So if you joined, Nikki, I think you're, maybe not. I don't know. I think, Nikki, you joined on November the 20th. So anybody that joined after October 1st to November 20th, I have resent all of the decals back out. So
sure.
Katie B and Sarah Jones are our two new patrons. So y'all's will go out this week. One thing I did see was we actually had, where Where'd he go? Motherfucker. Oh, there it is. So we had some comments finally left as people are joining. You have that opportunity, so you don't. Most people just skip over that. But one Christine Morgan, you can see how much I checked this 2 weeks ago, gave us a comment. Said, the first thing I want to say to you all, English is not my strong suit.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
What?
They speak English and what?
The first thing I want to say to you all is that your podcast is the very first and only one that has made me want to become a patron.
Wow, that's high praise. Seriously.
Yeah.
No bullshit. My fiance is not even a patron, and she's a patron to my good Lord. They just did the Jean Benet thing.
Yeah.
What is that one?
I don't know. True Crime Broads.
Yeah, it's like not My Favorite Murder, but the other one with the women.
Dang women folk.
Golly, I can't even remember it, and I'm going to get in trouble for it, too.
Well, this one is, I enjoy listening to you guys more than True Crime Garage, and I absolutely love True Crime Garage. I also really enjoy...
That's high praise right there.
Yes, I also really enjoy the banter and the humor. So, yeah, anytime we get mentioned with the two gentlemen from True Crime Garage, that'll make the old head swell. The other comment was left by Katie B., our new patron. She says, "Dear Mysterious Brews team, y'all, I just got to say your podcast is like butter on a biscuit, pure magic. However, I reckon it's time to toss a little extra spice into the pot. Have y'all ever thought about stirring in more recent solved murders or even white-collar crimes? I like solved cases." Well, Katie, I
get that. But now that you're a patron,
you gonna get it.
You might get some solved cases.
That's right.
Fucked up. But the whole point of Mysterious Brews is the mystery.
Yeah. The main episodes are strictly unsolved murders, mysteries, and the mayhem. As for patrons,
it's Crime Junkie she's a patron of.
Oh, yeah. When it comes to patron, we're prostitutes for the dollar, to be honest with you. We'll do a damn episode on anything on Patreon. As you could tell when we released the pickle episode. If you have not done the patron thing and you have not heard the pickle story, first of all, ask yourself why.
It's very short, I'll be honest with you.
But it's worth...
I told a couple other stories. I told the Kobe Bryant baseball story and a couple other ones. But man, oh man, it might be short, but that pickle story is worth hearing.
Oh, it's worth a $3 tier.
You won't
not be disappointed.
You won't see pickles the same again. I'll tell you that much.
No, you won't. Jeez. Now. Katie also left us a banter in the chat menu of Patreon, and I will not relinquish that because we have to think on her request. But like I said, if you're a patron, get on the Patreon app, go to messages, and you can either send private messages, there's a chat group in there as well. So I wanted to give us official shout-outs. It is Dr. Katie Baruth from Naugatuck, Connecticut. And Miss Sarah Jones from Oliver Springs, Tennessee.
Me and Mrs. Jones. I love that. I love that song. That's just, I'm sorry.
Also,
don't mind me. I'm just over here singing to myself.
Will Brackett had reached out. He is using the RSS feed through Patreon. If you copy that and you paste that into Apple Podcast, you get all of our regular episodes that we release on Patreon early, plus the Patreon exclusive right there in your Apple app. he was having some technical difficulties, and for some reason, he was not getting a couple of the episodes. So we exchanged emails, and I swear to God, I didn't uncheck or check a box, but somehow it fixed itself. So if you are one of those that are having problems getting to your Patreon exclusive stuff, let us know. I think that's all of the bills, Nils. Oh, you can also now.
Sir, we got 5-star reviews.
I'm going to let you do that, but I wanted to give this shameless plug too. You can now listen to us on YouTube podcasts. So if YouTube is your thing, there is now a podcast option on the menu for YouTube, so you can listen to us there too. All right, give us what you got.
Well, if you're a patron, you might have already heard these, but I don't care. I'm going to let them all out for everybody to hear. If you love the podcast, you've listened, and you haven't given us a 5-star review, please do, because we will read it on air, because we are shameless whores.
For the dollar.
Whores, I say.
Hers.
Okay, we got one from Cody Jack, 1992. He's old school, but he just now finally gave us a rating. It's titled Arm Flexing Emoji, and it's 5 stars, and all he says is, "Go Dogs." Fuck them. Fuck them dogs. I wish like hell they lost to Georgia Tech.
I will say Cody is a hotshot driver, and he had.
What the hell does that mean?
He takes heavy equipment on flatbeds and drives all night, makes good money. I don't.
Hell yeah, man! That's the heart of our country, man. You got to give it up to truckers, brother.
He also
they make our lives what they are.
Make a 40-hour week for a living.
Just to send it on down the line.
All right, so Cody also was hit in the hurricane that came through, so he had to redo a bunch of stuff. So he's from the great city of Vidalia, Georgia. That's right, the same ones that the onions come from.
I never quite understand what makes those onions grow just there, but it's true. You can't get them sweet onions anywhere else but Vidalia, Georgia.
That's right.
It's amazing. I love Vidalia onions. Just so you know. We got another one. We got a second one. If you want to hear it.
Yeah, man, let's hear it.
It's a good one. Daisy Crazy 81 says, my favorite podcast, 5 stars. I saw your podcast mentioned on Reddit and tuned in to hear your take on the Summer Wells case. I immediately felt like I have known you guys for years. I have been binging your podcast for the past 8 or 9 months, and I'm finally all caught up. Keep up the good work, and go Vols!
Oh, damn, that one's too loud, man. God.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was nauseating.
But I wish that I was on old Rocky Top down in the Tennessee hills. Ain't no... I figured you'd mute me.
On Post Brew Hangover, the Winfords, we got to go hang out with the Winfords just for a weekend. We may regret it.
Where are they at?
Arkansas. Where you think they at, brother?
That's true. What part of Arkansas?
When I talked to her last year when I took my son to the Weldon, they are closer to the West Memphis area.
Oh, so they're right. Yeah, they're right across the border. If anybody lives near Hot Springs in Arkansas or is willing to take me to Hot Springs, I'm gone. I'll go. I love Hot Springs, Arkansas. It's amazing. I was very impressed with it. If I ever have to run from the law, probably shouldn't say this on the podcast, but if I ever have to run from the law, I'm going to Hot Springs.
I don't blame you. I love Arkansas, man. I love all of that. Conway, Batesville.
Conway Twitty?
No, Conway, Arkansas.
Oh,
Fayetteville, Bentonville, all them, man. I love it. Love it. I ain't met a town in Arkansas I don't like. Well, maybe West Memphis, but we just coming across the river there. So let me go back.
Now, West Memphis is, believe it or not, West Memphis is very close to Memphis, Tennessee.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's crazy
It's
how
crazy.
that shit goes.
Actually, unfortunately, the murder site of those 3 boys is like the first exit. When you cross over from Memphis, Tennessee to Arkansas. It's like literally the first exit.
Also got some love for my dog since he didn't have to find out that he was Old Yeller.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you, man. Seriously.
Yeah, it was touch and go, man. It was rough. It was a rough week. I just look at him every day now, and I just look at him. Oh, and the reason I brought up the Winfords was on the Post Brew Hangover Patreon exclusive, she was like, hey, thanks for the deuces, jackass. She didn't say jackass. But she was like, thanks for the deuces. Usually I don't do the deuces on the patrons, but now I will just because of you, Miss Winford.
It's our fucking calling card, man. I don't care if it's Patreon or not. You play that ignorant-ass Patreon thing I said fucking 5 years ago every time that I hate.
I can't believe
And
you'd
you
say
won't say
such.
deuces at the end?
I can't believe you'd say
calling
such.
card.
Good Lord. All right, let's get into it. We are talking about one Amityville. Is it real or is it fakeage? We're going to give you both sides of the coin. We're going to let you decide. So, in 1975, a family of 5 moved into their dream home, a 6-bedroom Dutch colonial at 112 Ocean Avenue, who they renamed the house with a big old sign out front, High Hopes.
Yeah, turns out they were wrong.
Yep. Now, the family was immediately inundated with awful spirits, bubbling green slime, red-eyed pig heads, levitating beds, and sinister cries to, quote, get out. 28 days later, that's exactly what they did. They left it with everything in there and would tell their terrifying story to anyone that would listen. So the book, The Amityville Horror, A True Story, was published in 1977 and shot to the top of the bestseller list. Hollywood would buy the rights and released the Amityville Horror movie in 1979, which, despite indifferent reviews, grew into a franchise of, at a minimum, 17 official movies to date and hundreds of Amityville copycats, all, quote...
You serious?
Based
17 official?
Yep.
What? I knew there was like a remake. I knew there were a couple sequels and a remake, but good Lord, 17?
There are 17 films that are all based around the Amityville Horror first movie, 1979, with Mr. Brolin. Now, how much of the Amityville Horror story is fact and how much is fiction? I don't know. Was the world's most famous haunting nothing more than an amateurish hoax? Well, there's a sociologist in New Zealand, Mr. Robert Bartholomew, and he specializes in mass hysteria, certainly thinks it was a hoax, and is amazed that nearly 50 years after the alleged haunting, we're still talking about Amityville. Quote, the Amityville myth persists in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. It's starkly obvious that it's a hoax, but people still want to believe, end quote. So to actually tell the story, we have to go back and talk about the events that put the house at 112 Ocean Avenue on the map. And unfortunately, that is the DeFeo family murders. On the outside, the DeFeos appeared to live happy lives on Long Island during the early 1970s. According to the New York Times, one of their neighbors described them as, quote, a nice, normal family, end quote. The family was comprised of Ronald Big Ronnie DeFeo Sr. and Louise DeFeo and their 5 children, Ronald Jr., Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew. Their Dutch colonial home at 112 Ocean Avenue had a swimming pool and a nearby boat dock. One local girl told the Times that Ronald DeFeo Sr. had frequently given her rides to her family's restaurant in Brooklyn. Now, another neighbor named Catherine O'Reilly said the DeFeos had befriended her after her husband passed away. It seemed as if the family were kind, loving people. But the DeFeos were a very different family behind closed doors. Now, Ronald DeFeo Sr. managed a Buick dealership for his father-in-law, Mr. Michael Brigante. And yes, that Brigante is just what you think it is.
Well, I have no idea.
That would be the mafioso.
Is there famous brigantes in the mafia?
They were not bosses, but they were. I'm not getting into the hierarchy. I can't remember capos and all that stuff, but they were in the pecking order.
Okay. Well, I respect the hell out of them.
Yes, yes, all of them. I just
want to go on record. Just because I apologize for not recognizing your name, sirs and ma'ams, but I respect the hell out of you.
Amen. Amen. I second that notion. Now, while managing a car dealership sounds like it would pay well, we're talking about the early 1970s. Ronald Sr.'s job couldn't support the family's lavish lifestyle, so Mr. Brigante was financing his daughter and son-in-law's life and had even purchased the home in Amityville so that they could move out of their cramped Brooklyn apartment. Mr. Brigante later gave Ronald Sr. about $50,000 cash to have the family portraits made. That's a lot of cheddar. Now, Big Ronnie, as Ronald DeFeo Sr. was affectionately known, presented himself as having a lot of money, while in reality, it was Mr. Brigante that had all the money and held the purse strings. It was rumored that Big Ronnie was an abusive and violent man. The person who received much of his rage and frustration was his oldest son, Ronald DeFeo Jr., who affectionately went by Butch. So Butch and Big Ronnie never were that close, according to those who knew the family. But Butch was also bullied at school for being overweight, with kids calling him names like Pork Chop and the Blob. By his teenage years, he had lost most of that weight. How did he do this? Well, it was through his use of amphetamines, which he had come to rely on, along with alcohol, as a coping mechanism for the abuse he was taking from Big Ronnie. To say that Big Ronnie and Butch fought frequently was an understatement. Butch once pulled a gun on Big Ronnie. Another time, Big Ronnie thought that Butch had disrespected him at the dinner table and beat Butch within an inch of his life. The beating was so bad that the other children were pleading with their father to stop beating on Butch because the blood was beginning to be cast onto the dining room table. Butch was technically employed at his grandfather's dealership as a mechanic. When he did show up to work, he usually left before his shift was up. Basically, Butch spent most of his time doing drugs, drinking, getting into fights, and arguing with his parents. Butch and Big Ronnie's tumultuous relationship would come to a head in the early hours of November 13th, 1974. Butch would shoot his father while he slept with a .35 Marlin rifle. He did not, however, just stop with killing his father. Butch also murdered his mother, Louise, his sisters, Dawn, 18, Allison, 13, and his two little brothers, Mark, 12, and John Matthew, 9. After killing his family, Butch took a shower, got dressed, collected all the incriminating evidence like the shell casings, and then on his way to work, he threw said evidence, along with the gun, into a storm drain. He would feign ignorance as to why his father hadn't shown up for work, going as far as to call him on the phone. Later that day, he decided to leave work and spend the afternoon with his friends, making sure to mention to all of them that he couldn't get in touch with his family for some reason. That evening, according to the New York Daily News, Butch ran to a nearby bar, screaming for help. He ripped open the door, screaming that, quote, someone had shot his family, end quote, and begged for someone to come with him to his house. Some of the customers did follow him back home and found the grisly scene. Each member of the DeFeo family was found dead, lying face down in the bed from what appeared to be bullet wounds. Big Ronnie and Louise had both been shot twice. All of the children had been shot once. So when police arrived at the scene, they found...
Okay, let me interrupt. When we're talking about real or fake, here's what I'm going to say about this murder. He used a rifle. That shit's going to be loud as hell. Like, neighbors are going to be able to hear it. But yet, every murder victim was laying in their bed as if they were asleep. That's weird.
Extremely weird. And for those of you that don't know what a .35 caliber rifle is, it looks like a Marlin 30-30. basically, and it's just a.
How does that explain something? If they don't know what a 35 caliber rifle is, they're not going to know what a fucking Marlin 3030 is.
Well, they're going to know John Wayne toted one in most of his movies, but you interrupted me, you son of a bitch.
No.
Yes.
Because as a manliest man that I am, I still don't know I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
It's a lever action Western looking rifle. It's got a tube down the barrel of it. Like you said, it's extremely loud.
A tube down the barrel? Wouldn't that be
underneath the barrel? I apologize.
What the hell are you talking about?
See, your manliness is showing.
Hey, I'm manly when it comes to like sports and shit, but when it comes to guns and stuff, I might be lacking.
Coach has a great point. No one in this little town could recall ever hearing a gunshot or anything like that. Yeah. Let's get back at it. So when police arrived at the scene, they found Ronald DeFeo Jr. in shock waiting for them. Now, Butch initially claimed to the authorities that he believed his family had been targeted by the mob. For the first day or so, it looked like the cops were buying his story. They even went as far as to place him in protective custody. However, they noticed pretty quickly that old Butch's account of what happened and what they were seeing at the scene just didn't jee-haw. One example was that Butch stated he had been at work all morning and with friends all afternoon. Therefore, he couldn't have killed his family. Police quickly determined the time of death for the family had occurred around 3 a.m. This was well before Butch would have gone to work. Butch gave the police the name of a hitman that he thought was the culprit. Bad thing for Butch was this notorious mob hitman was out of state with a rock-solid alibi.
So he says.
Well, from what I could gather, I watched a couple of documentaries about just the murders. From what I can gather, Butch didn't even attempt to find someone that was in New York. Like, this guy was under surveillance, I believe, in another state. So by the next day, Butch had confessed to the crime. He told police, quote, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast," end quote. Butch's criminal trial would begin in October of 1975, captivating the nation for two main reasons. One, the total brutality of the crime, and two, the unusual details surrounding Butch's defense. Now, Butch's lawyer would build a defense claiming that his client was an insane man who killed his family, quote, in self-defense because of the demonic voices in his head.
But how's that self-defense if it's demonic voices within your own head?
I guess they're trying to paint him as basically having the shit beat out of him by his father. He kills his father. The demonic voices tell him he has to finish off the entire family.
I mean, it is a famous example of the devil made me do it defense.
And they said that
it don't work.
During the trial, this is kind of where it laid the groundwork for the satanic panic.
I don't even want to talk about that shit.
No, I don't either.
That shit pisses me off so bad. We get into West Memphis 3, all that shit with a satanic panic, man. People were so stupid.
Yep.
Back in the day.
Yep.
And you know what?
Yep.
They're still pretty damn stupid.
Yeah, they are. They are. Now, Butch would later be sentenced to 6 consecutive 25 to life sentences. You would think that the story would just end at Butch's sentencing, but the story of the Amityville murders was not over. The public was starving for answers on several mysteries surrounding the case. Authorities had no idea how all 6 victims had died in their sleep without a struggle. Another thing that puzzled them was the fact that none of the neighbors, like Coach had said, had heard gunshots. Remember, Butch had executed his family with a Marlin 35 caliber rifle, not something that is known to be very quiet. Butch claimed he was able to kill everyone systematically because he had drugged the family's dinner. The medical examiner had noted that a long time had passed between the family eating a meal and their deaths.
Well, I mean, drugging the family would definitely account for the fact that they didn't move, they didn't struggle, they didn't whatever. It may have been a long time, but of course they could have been in a deep sleep. You know, I mean, me and you have both been intoxicated.
Once or twice.
Once or twice in our lives. And even though the alcohol or whatever it is wears off, you're still in a deep sleep. So, I mean, that could explain it, but not likely. Especially when it came to the parents, they were laying next to each other. I'm not sure who he shot first, but you would think that whomever he shot first, the other would wake up, because that is like right there.
Yes, I agree with you.
It's probably a deafening, so loud it's deafening.
Yeah, and I didn't want to, tip off the van down the street any more than I have already previously done in previous cases. But I think, and this gets into a whole nother realm, at that point blank range, it's still going to be loud, but you're only going to hear the primer pop because the bullet doesn't travel enough to break the sound barrier for that loud crack. I'm not saying that that's why no one here heard it, but there is that kind of little physics going on there. The other thing was, and this was extremely disturbing, his motive. It was crystal clear that DeFeo had many issues with his father. But what baffled the investigators was, why did he murder the rest of his family, especially his youngest brothers? Butch would not help in this matter because he would change his story multiple times in prison, shedding very little light on the killings. This leads us to the unluckiest sons of guns out there, the Lutz family. In December of 1975, a new family moved into the DeFeo's old home. And that is one George Lutz and his wife Kathy and their 3 children. And they would even go as far as to purchase the house with the DeFeo's furniture still in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You say it like they were cursed, like such unfortunate thing, but like, what was it, 6-bedroom or 5-bedroom?
6, I believe. It's a big ass house, dude.
6 bedrooms for $80,000? Shit.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong.
I'll put up with some ghosts.
Yeah.
Be like, hey man, you might have opened all the cupboards, but you put them some bitches back by the morning, because if I come down here and it's messed up, there's gonna be hell to pay.
That's right. Where we at? Oh, okay. So keep in mind, guys and girls, gals, boys and girls, and children of all ages, that when they purchased this home, this was way before there was this thing called a crime scene cleanup service. Yeah, there were still blood stains on the walls and bullet holes in the walls. Amazingly, I know this is a shocker, the Lutz would flee the house in terror, leaving all their worldly possessions behind on January 14th, 1976, a mere 28 days after moving in. Their claim for getting the hell out of Dodge was that the house was haunted by the spirits of the dead DeFeos. Now, the Lutzes asked a local priest to bless the house due to the tragedy that had previously occurred before they moved in. Depending on what you read or what documentary you watch, the priest states that he sensed a sinister presence in one of the upstairs bedrooms and warned the Lutzes not to sleep in that room. In the book, the priest felt a sharp slap on his face and heard a groaning voice scream, quote, "Get out." He also had stigmata wounds appear on his hands the next day. Now, just after this, the really weird shit starts, and that was doors slamming at all hours of the night and day, a persistent coldness in the house despite roaring fires in the fireplace, and I think it was even documented that George was the unfortunate beneficiary of this coldness, and he would just stoke the fire to where it's just hot as balls in the house, and no one else was cold. There was a gelatinous goo or slime that appeared on the walls and the carpet, While it was mainly reported as being a greenish color, other colors such as red and black were also reported. One night, Kathy transformed into a 90-year-old woman. On a separate, yeah, you can just look over at your wife in bed and she's now 90 years old. On a separate occasion, the face of a demon-eyed pig appeared in a bedroom window. The last night the Lutzes would stay in the house, George reported that Kathy levitated and slid off the bed. Later that night, as George was attempting to go to sleep after just seeing his wife levitate off the bed, he began to hear sound of his children's beds slamming on the floors directly above him. This would last all night, according to him. He also noted that there was an unseen presence lurking in the room. Lights throughout the home would flicker on and off as well. The next day, the kids woke traumatized, explaining that they were unable to move or leave their rooms the entire night. Terrified, exhausted, and not able to take it anymore, the Lutz family walked out of 112 Ocean Avenue, leaving everything they had behind, vowing never to return. So we fast forward to 1977, and author Jay Anson published a novel titled The Amityville Horror, based on the Lutz family claims of paranormal activity happening in the home. The home was subsequently investigated by world-renowned ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren. In 1979, a movie by the same name as the book, The Amityville Horror, was released, and it starred James Brolin and Margot Kidder as George and Kathy Lutz.
You know, James Brolin gave birth to Josh Brolin, and he's one of my favorite actors.
I don't believe he shit him out his ass.
He was Thanos.
I believe that you're correct, but I believe his mother gave birth to him. I don't think his daddy had nothing to do.
I'm just saying, he's one of my favorite actors. That's all I'm trying to say. Why you got to make it personal?
I do agree with you. I like Josh Brolin, man. He's a good actor.
Absolutely. If you haven't watched Outer Range on Amazon Prime, you should. It's good.
Now, according
that might be my recommendation today.
Imagine that.
I was trying to brainstorm what I was going to recommend, but that's going to be it.
Now, according to the Warrens, Ed was physically pushed to the floor, and Lorraine felt an overwhelming sense of a demonic presence. Along with their research team, they claimed to capture a picture of a spirit in the form of a little boy on the stairway. The story became so high profile, it launched its own conspiracy theories, books, and films. Now, Laura Dotto, who was an investigative reporter in the Amityville area back in the late 70s, ended up, quote, cracking the case, so to speak, by tracking down George and Kathy Lutz. Dotto would team up with the Warrens to explore the allegedly haunted home. And when Dotto was asked in an article by 2fab.com, quote, what was the experience like when you went into the Amityville house with Ed and Lorraine Warren? She would respond with the following. I recall Lorraine didn't know whose room was what, but she walked into Ronnie DeFeo's bedroom, and I was behind her, and she stopped right at the door sill. And she backed out and says, I can't go into this room. There's just too much evil and too much oppression in here. So she was obviously picking up on Ronnie's vibes. And I remember at a certain point on the stairs, the second floor landing, she also got a headache. And 2 weeks later was when we went in and did the so-called psychic slumber party, as I dubbed it, and the seance. It was one of those things that was actually kind of funny. What happened was, well, she said it was kind of funny in hindsight. What happened was you had the film crew there. Ed and Lorraine Warren brought one of their research associates, a photographer, a couple of psychics that they dealt with. George Lutz had called up some other paranormal investigators and invited them. So there was about 21 people in the house that night, and it actually took on a party atmosphere. So in the terms of people expecting, quote, poltergeist or the exorcist, you know, levitating dining room tables, beds, and portal from the next dimension to open up, that didn't happen. With that said, there were a couple of very interesting things that did happen that night, which was our cameraman. He got called in to do this at the last minute. So my point was he didn't know a whole lot about the story of the house. And he went up the stairs with his light meter. And he got halfway up the first flight of stairs. And he turned around and he looked at me with an almost quizzical look on his face. And he says, "There's a room on the second floor. It's the second bedroom, the second door on the right. And one wall is filled with mirrors." And he says, "And I don't know how I know that." Again, that was the master bedroom where the Lutzes were and where, obviously, Louise and Ronald DeFeo Sr. were murdered. And the cameraman continues up the stairs. As he turns around, I was at the bottom of the stairs looking up at him, and I see all the color drain out of his face. And he clutches his chest and doubles over, at which point our sound guy and the lighting guy ran upstairs to get him back down to sit on the bottom step, get him some water, because he really didn't look good. I remember taking his pulse, and you could see it was pretty rapid. He goes, quote, "I just had heart palpitations. I just felt this heaviness. I've never felt anything like this. That was scary." So, if you're buying what Miss Dido is putting down, this cameraman has no clue, and then he basically gives you a layout of one of the floors and what a couple of the bedrooms look like. And then the heaviness of the situation damn near gives him a heart attack. But what about Dre? I was trying to get you to pay attention.
What?
So Ronald DeFeo Jr. made numerous attempts to have his sentences reduced. He changed the story of what happened during the Amityville murders multiple times. One of his news stories was that his sister Dawn had committed the killings and she had begged him to kill her because she just couldn't live with herself. Ronald DeFeo Jr. passed away in prison at the age of 69 in 2021 and stated, quote, "I guess the Amityville Horror really is supposed to be me because I'm the one that got convicted of killing my family. I'm the one they say who did it. I'm the one that's supposed to be possessed by the devil," end quote. Now, on the hoax side of things, for those that believe the Lutzes made it all up, they point to Ronald DeFeo Jr.'s lawyer, William Weber. Weber had been shopping around a book idea about the murders called Devil on My Back. And according to Weber, he and the Lutzes had a creative brainstorming session over, quote, "many bottles of wine." And the Lutzes shared the story of the unsettling things that they felt and saw at the house. Weber in turn shared the details about the DeFeos and the killings that only he knew. Weber claimed that several of these details were spun into the book and the movie. Weber also told the Lutzes that a neighbor's cat would peer into the DeFeo's window at night, and this was the basis for the red-eyed pig. Ronald Sr., Big Ronnie, had once slapped his wife while she held a plate of red sauce spaghetti. That became the mysterious red goo on the wall, which later morphed into green slime bubbling from the keyholes.
I mean, honestly, do you think so? You think it was just... You think it's that simple to prove a hoax? Oh, I mean, that sounds kind of stupid.
No, I agree with you. I mean, people
Who's
are
going to be who would fall for that? Is
right.
What I'm trying to say.
And I'm not saying Ed and Lorraine Warren are on the up and up on everything that they do, but they do have a decent track record, and they're going to know the difference.
Do they know?
They're going to know the difference between spaghetti sauce.
I mean, do they know? We should do an episode on them.
We should.
I mean, come on, man.
In 1988, Weber stated, quote, "We took the real-life incidents and transposed them. In other words, it was a hoax," end quote. Weber and the Lutzes parted ways after a fight over how money from the book would be split, and the Lutzes took their story to Jay Anson, a journalist and filmmaker who had made a short documentary on the making of the movie The Exorcist. Now, back to Mr. Robert Bartholomew, the New Zealand sociologist. According to him, quote, "Anson listened to 35 hours of taped interviews with the Lutzes. Then he sat down and wrote the book. The best way to describe Jay Anson is a writer who didn't let the facts get in the way of a good story," end quote. Writer's Digest published a terrific interview with Anson in 1979, soon after the book and the movie deal had made him stupid rich. He was famously elusive about the truthfulness of his account. Quote, "It's funny, almost nobody ever says to me, 'Hey, that book of yours is a bunch of bull.' I didn't believe a word of it. Instead, they ask if I think that the Lutzes told me the story that is true. And I answered them the same way I answered you when you asked me the question. I tell them I have no idea whether the book is true or not, but I'm sure that the Lutzes believe what they told me to be true." End quote. Now, Bartholomew is convinced that the Lutzes abandoned the house because they couldn't keep up with the mortgage and tax payments. They created the haunting story as an excuse and a lucrative side hustle. Quote, "They wanted to make some money off of it." End quote. It is worth noting that the Lutzes have never, ever retracted their story, and both have passed a lie detector test with flying colors.
Yeah, but didn't their children recant their story?
No. Well, I didn't see where their children did, but one of them...
children kind of disputed the story. I wouldn't say recanted, I would say disputed.
One of their sons, Daniel, admitted that he still has nightmares about the horrifying things he experienced in the house. Quote, "Our critics are people who've never been in the house, just people who read a book," George Lutz told the Washington Post in 1979. "No one who was ever in the house, who investigated, ever called it a hoax. No one with any credentials who was personally involved ever called it a hoax. No one who helped us there with the auction, with getting stuff to the Salvation Army, ever called it a hoax. All I know is what happened to me." End quote. Now, the Amityville house, whose street number was changed in hopes of discouraging horror fans, has been sold at least 4 times since the murders. None of the new owners, after the Lutzes, have ever reported seeing any psychic or paranormal phenomena. It last sold in 2016 for $850,000 and had undergone a renovation to take out the little half-moon eyeball-looking windows. Now, the house where the movie was filmed in 1979 has been completely renovated and was for sale in June of this year for a price tag of $1.699 million. And the little mayor of Amityville said what he despises is any big movie or documentary that comes out because the town is swarmed with looky-loos. So that's the story, the Reader's Digest version, I guess you could say, of the Amityville Horror. We could have dived real deep into the inner workings of the DeFeos, but there's many a documentary out there. There is that whole angle about Dawn is the one that killed him and then begged him to kill her. There's
what?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that.
There's a whole, I didn't even chase it, but there's a whole Reddit thread about their relationship. It's kind of incestual and it's
really?
Yeah.
I have not heard anything about that.
So there's a whole lot of things that you can run with if you are so interested in. The I don't know, man. I think that I do think part of it is haunted. I think what the Lutzes experienced may have been embellished a little bit, but for the most part, I do think the damn place is haunted.
That's exactly what I was going to say about our theories when we got to it, was when we talk about real or fake. I think if you believe in hauntings, that is certainly a place that would be haunted.
Yeah.
Such a tragic crime committed, you would think there would be something to it, but I definitely think there's been embellishment. I think that they took advantage of what was going on and they really wanted to cash in on it. So I would say that definitely not, it is not a 100% truthful testimony about what happened.
So you're thinking 50-50 50 bullshit, 50 true?
I mean, I think that would be a good way to put it. I couldn't tell you exactly. I would have to really examine the evidence and the testimonies and stuff. But I do think there's something to that house. But here's the thing is that they moved out. The Lutzes moved out. People moved in, and they've never reported anything. So that is a major
red flag
as far as it being completely bullshit. But from what I know about what we cover, for such a tragic event to happen, it would make sense for it to be at least a little bit haunted.
Well, see, what I'm thinking is some of those, maybe some doors slamming, maybe some disembodied voices. I don't know if there's slime bubbling out of the keyholes or shit running down the wall. They did find like this hidden room under the staircase that had red lights in it when, I think during the Warrens investigation. There's not a whole lot about that on there. There's a documentary on Tubi. If you get on Tubi and just search Amityville Horror, you'll see a couple of those documentaries. I don't know, man. I think DeFeo was jacked up. I think he was, he had the hell beat out of him by his daddy, and his mama just sat there and watched. He didn't do himself any favors with the way he kind of was a POS about working and doing what he was supposed to. But
well, at the same time, I mean, even if that's true, he didn't deserve to be fucking abused by his parents.
No, I agree.
But I mean, we cannot you cannot deny the fact that there was an extreme tragedy at that location.
Yeah, and I think that's what
horrible tragedy.
I think that's what leads me to believe that it's haunted, is because there's just a whole lot of despair and death there.
Well, I mean, honestly, to me, the thing that makes me think there's something supernatural, at the very least, to what happened, not the haunting, not the Lutzes, nothing, but the fact that none of the victims moved. They didn't fight back. They didn't try to run. They all were found essentially where they fell asleep.
Yeah, they said that the youngest boy, in one of the documentaries, they had said that he kind of survived longer than the rest of them, but they didn't go into a whole lot. And I'm glad they didn't, because me learning about whether or not, an 8-year-old, I think is how old he was. No, 9-year-old, John Matthew, suffering. I just didn't want to hear that. But they said that it wasn't like he could get up, but he probably survived longer than any of them. I just don't, man, I don't get it. I don't get the... And DeFeo didn't do himself any favors changing his story 100,000 times. So, but anyway, that's our take.
I mean, using a hunting rifle to execute your family and none of them woke up is insane. It's insane.
Yeah, you're right. That's our take on the old Amityville Horror. You make your decision. You can leave some comments if you want to.
Well, I mean, do you think it's fake?
I think... Yes, I did, Jack Leg. I said that it was 50-50.
50-50?
50-50. I think, like I said, it was embellished, but I think there's some stuff to it.
I definitely think it was embellished, but yeah, again, at the same time, I think there's something to it.
Well, here's the other thing. If you watch any of these paranormal shows now, they have these people that come in and will sage the house and have these mediums come in and try to help people move on. Who's to say that one of the next owners didn't do that and just didn't... They did it, it worked, and they didn't advertise it.
That's a good point. That's a very fine point.
So I know that you have quasi given your recommendation, which is Outer Range.
Yeah, Outer Range, Amazon Prime. Look it up. If you liked our episode on Mel's Hole, you will love Outer Range.
It is quite the mindfuck if you will give it some time.
Absolutely.
My recommendation is kind of teetering on the mysterious, is another podcast interviewed Mr. Ballin, and that is the Sean Ryan Show. Did a 4-hour and 18-minute interview with Mr. Ballin and goes through his entire life, how he come up with the premise, his time in the SEALs, all of that stuff.
Mr. Ballin was in the SEALs?
Yep, he sure was.
He does not fucking look like it.
No, and when he tells his story about being a kid and in high school, he doesn't sound like he would make it, but he did.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good interview, man. I enjoy it. Some of the people that Sean Ryan interviews, they're hilarious too. So, but anyway, if you're into remote viewing, he interviews, I think, 3 separate people on remote viewing, and it'll make you scratch your head. So, but anyway, that's my recommendation. Well, Coachum, you got anything else for the lovely ladies and gents out there in podcast land?
Oh, you know I don't.
Deuces.